if we are okay here, I want to switch gears and talk a bit about longitudinal problem tracking, because this is something I've been struggling with for a long time. We all remember that in centricity, if you did an assessment, it would stick, and you could go back and see. I've got people with depression that they've changed medications 15 times, and I can see, you tried this, you tried Lexapro here, and you tried this here, and you can see it all. That doesn't happen in Cerner. So I've got some tricks that will help us to survive until. I do know I've seen in the planning stages a big upgrade for Cerner coming that will allow assessments to occur. When we're going to get that, it may be a couple of years, I don't know, but it is in the works. So longitudinal care, Cerner was initially really designed to do good hospital care, and then we've added on and started doing ambulatory care with it, which is a whole different thing. We need to be able to figure out what's happened to our patients over months and years. So the first thing to know is problems and diagnoses are not the same thing. And this was really confusing to me for months and months and months. I was working with Cerner for 6 months and didn't understand the difference between a problem and a diagnosis. Problems are the things the patient has had now or in the past. But a diagnosis is the what is wrong or what the condition has for this visit only. And it could be the same as a problem or it could not be. So not all problems are diagnoses. So here's an example, and it has to do with fins. We're back to fin hell again. So if you have a patient, they come in to have an ear infection today, you put it in as a diagnosis, and when you're in the M page, you hit it as this visit and not as chronic. So that's a diagnosis. That's for this visit only. It's attached to one fin. The patient also has diabetes, and so you address their diabetes today, but in the M page, it's clicked off as both this visit and chronic. So that is a diagnosis, and it's a problem. And then, so problems can be associated with multiple fins because the name of the problem carries forward each time, but the assessments you put on the problem do not. So problems represent chronic conditions that stay with the patient. So I've been brutal when I'm looking at my problem list now, they're coming over from preload, and I'll see on there UTI, URI, all of these things are listed as chronic. Ingrown toenail, bunions, I'm just unclicking the chronic ones and taking them off there because it's not an issue for the patient today, and it's probably not something that's going to affect their long-term care. And certainly if it's an acute visit, you want to get it off the list.
So, forgive me, because I've been doing the same thing that drives me crazy. Where does that stuff go? Is there like an inactive list?
I'll show you where it goes. That doesn't disappear.
You don't just delete it?
Well, if you resolve it, so
resolving it.
So I had a guy who had prostate cancer, and he had his prostate taken out, and he doesn't have any cancer anymore. So I just resolved it, took it off the list. It's a little different flavor of what happens in the background, and I'm not sure I understand it deeply, but I can show you kind of how it looks on the problem list here. You want to be sure that if you put a new problem on that you're going to want to deal with at a future visit, that you make sure you click that chronic button. So when you're in the chart, I'll just show this here a second, and you're in the problem list, and you add something new. So notice up here it says this visit and chronic. When you're adding something new, you have 3 choices. So if you click this visit, it's only going to put it into this visit button. You want to be careful that if you have it listed as this visit and chronic, you don't put in URI. Okay, or if you do put in URI, it's going to go in as both an acute visit and a chronic visit. It's going to show up the next time the patient comes in and pollute the problem list. So if you don't think they're going to have a URI forever, for months and months and years, either unclick this, or when you put it in just as a this visit problem. So this visit, these are the diagnoses. Chronic ones, these are the problems. But be sure if it's something that is going to be chronic that you do put it, you have the chronic one linked. Don't put it in just at this visit, or you'll have to enter it again the next time. So a diagnosis is visit specific, and the diagnoses, every visit that you have with a patient starts with no diagnoses. You'll see none of the this visits are clicked, because that's what goes on. If it's clicked for this visit, that goes on your charges. So you'll see it show up in your orders, and when you go to do your charge, it's going to be default. If you clicked 15 things that are this visit, that's going to go off the side of the page and associate all those things with your office visit charge. But the assessments, as we talked about, don't carry forward. Now, there is something that does carry forward, and I want to be sure that you all see this trick. It's the summary. There's a comments of the chronic problem that can be managed on the problem list, and you can update them at future visits, and they don't carry forward. That said, they do carry forward. Comments are not editable, so the key thing about here is you don't want to write in here, this patient is a so-and-so, and say nasty things about them. Once you hit that enter key, you cannot get rid of it. It is stuck in the chart. So if you put the comment in on the wrong problem, or if you put the wrong comment in, or just vent your spleen, you're not going to be able to get rid of it. So you can see, let me actually go in the live system. You can see the diagnoses and comments in the same place. So they're in the dark side menu here. I just love that term, the dark side menu. Here's the diagnosis and problem list, and this is a testing patient, so there are a million things in here. But the problems are at the bottom, and the diagnoses are at the top. And you can display them as just what's active, or what's active and inactive. Then you can modify them, and you can add from this screen. So when I'm dealing with the problem list, I'll go back and forth between here and the M page. The M page is nice if you want to delete stuff, because you can just one-click it and go, get rid of this, resolve this. If you want to modify stuff, though, you really want to do it from this page. And this, in the dark side, I'll show you again, it's under diagnoses. I kept looking for problems for this. It's called diagnoses and problems. So look for the D. This dark side menu is mostly alphabetical after you get through the high volume stuff at the top. So that's where it is. So let's modify this. So let's modify diabetes mellitus. So if I click on this and make sure diabetes is highlighted, I see the problem here. I'm going to show you a nice hack. Say that I want to display diabetes at the top of the list. If I go in here and put an asterisk in front of the display as, this is now going to go to the top of my problem list. So I can put some comments in here, and I'll say, did not tolerate metformin, even at 250 milligram dose. Okay. You can add lines in here by doing Control-Enter. So if you don't want to go off to the side of the page, you hold the Control button down, hit the Enter key, and you can do multiple lines here. You can say, diagnosed in 2004, 14, and hates needles. So these are some things.
Now, Charles, in the dynamic document, don't all the comments, everything you've written there actually prints every time you create a dynamic document, right?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to hit OK and refresh. So now you'll see there's a sticky note on this, and in the problems and diagnoses page, I can hover over the sticky note and see what that shows. So as you start adding these things and you want to say, wait a second, I want to know what's going on with this patient's diabetes, you can hover it. And these comments, they stack. So if you see them the next time and add a new comment and say, we tried glipizide and they had hypoglycemia or whatever, you can add them on so you can keep some longitudinal history. In the M page, if you refresh it, it's going to show up like this. I hope it refreshes. There we go. So now you see it says diabetes mellitus. Look where diabetes mellitus is. I stuck the asterisk in the top of the display name. It's now at the top of the list. Okay. So I had a patient who's on dialysis. That's a really important fact to know. I want everybody to know that who looks at her chart. I put chronic kidney disease stage 5 on dialysis, put the asterisk in front of it, and now it's on my M page in my dynamic docs, it floats up to the top of the list. You don't want to do that for everything. It'll all float to the top of the list and then sort alpha. But if you've got one or two things that are really important for that patient, like they're on dialysis or something like that, you can change the display name in the documents, in the diagnosis problems, and it'll float to the top.
can you go back to the M page?
Sure.
Can't you get to that comment section?
Yes, you can get to it here in the M page. If you click on it here,
Yeah. Okay.
you'll be able to see the comments. You have to click this little down thing. It's not as easy, but you can click it down and you can see all the comments on this page and then the details. Now you notice there's a comment box here. Why don't we put the comments in this box? You get one line, okay? And if you want to add more information, I mean, you can type as much as you want. You'll disappear off the side of the screen if you're a good typist. You can't even see if you spell it right. But you can put one line on there, but as soon as you hit enter in this box, and I've done this a million times in testing, I'll go, I want another line, hit enter, it saves your comment. So I try to do my comments in the diagnosis and problem screen because it's just easier to do, and I can mess with how I display the name of the problem.
You do it in the diagnosis and problem screen, but you theoretically only do it for problems.
Do it for diagnoses, but
you can do it for either one, but it's not going to stick.
It's not going to stick.
Okay.
Dr. Zelnick, let me know if you're going to get to this, and I'll stop talking. But so yesterday during our PCMH meeting, and we talked about this because we have Vanessa who does prior authorizations, and this is really important to her job. When she does a prior authorization, she really relies on that comment, what used to be the assessment that would default in centricity, about what meds have they already tried that doesn't work in order to be able to get that patient the med they need. So, but if they're documenting, this is the only way to do that. Is that correct?
To carry it forward. And you can do it in your note, but then you have to find the right date and the right note. Right, or you may have to look back.
Trying not to do.
Yeah. So
3 years down the road,
it's going to get
harder.
So for Dr. Baruti, I had a patient who has a past history of, I've literally 15 lines of all the depression meds she's tried and failed, and different psychiatrist stuff she's seen. I was in the past medical history. I went and highlighted that in centricity. I copied it over as a big, giant comment in her depression summary in Cerner.
So you paste it right in, or do you have to drop it in a WordPad or something?
I was able to paste it right into that.
You have to hit Control-C and Control-V, though.
Yeah.
Like when you're in Cerner, you cannot do
cut and paste.
right-click and hit. Like there's no
Copy and paste. Like in Word.
You have to use your old keyboard tricks, yep. But you can do that, and if you have like really important free text stuff, it's not in all the assessments. Although sometimes the assessments I've summarized, like the last 5 years of their heart disease, I'll go in and pull that out and chunk it in there.
Screenshots work that way too. That's been one of my lovely.
And it goes in with formatting. It doesn't all go in one line.
If you use the diagnosis problem page, it usually goes in pretty well for me.
Excellent.
A functional question. In the age of a completely shared chart,
right.
All that wonderful work you're doing that makes it possible for us to have a narrative for the patient's care. If someone else removes that, how do we control, is my question,
You don't.
all the work you've done to make it possible for us to do what we do?
You don't. So that's the next thing.
Okay.
Say you get comments in the chart, and they're now 3 years long, and and they stack up and everything, and you want to get rid of them. So here's a bug that's a feature. You go in and you resolve that problem, and then you put the problem back in again. It comes in as a new problem, and all your comments are lost.
So does the original stuff be retained by the software somewhere?
It's somewhere in the system, and you'd have to go back into the inactive problems and find the ones that are crossed out. So you have to go into all.
So we don't lose that data if you happen to be like me.
Right. Here's one on chest pain, okay, and you can see it says complete cardiology workup and stress test with Dr. Silly, blah, blah, blah. This is one I put in. So it's still there. You could go back in and cut and paste it again into the new problem.
So in sensitive specialists who don't necessarily respect our presence in the chart, we can still get at the data.
You can still get at the data, and then you can give them hell.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I'm up for that, but at least find what I need.
Yeah.
So that means we should approach with caution if we're trying to upgrade our, the coders say you need a different diabetes diagnosis, and we're trying to clean up things, we should be careful about what has comments attached to it.
I don't have enough experience with the system so far to say what's going to happen in that situation.
Okay.
But a problem with a sticky on it may be one that someone has done some work on to
Right.
carry through some old information. So
What does the sticky, I mean, I've seen them and I haven't
That's
touched
the
them.
comment. That means there's a
the
comment.
little yellow comment
The
note.
little yellow thing, thanks.
These little yellow sticky here.
Okay, so it shows up as the yellow
It
sticky.
shows up as a sticky on the problem, and it shows up in the M page the same way,
Okay. Because when I used to
right here.
before to see what inpatient stuff, I was click on the yellow sticky because there was always what was really useful in there. The rest of the chart had nothing useful, but the yellow sticky did.
In the M page, unfortunately, they don't highlight. You have to open the problem. If I see this, I just go over to the dark side menu because it's easier to not manipulate things.
Charles, can I make a really quick word of caution about problems and diagnoses? Super quick. So there's a preload issue, what Dr. Lesko is talking about, the way that codes are mapped. So if you had a diagnosis of screening mammogram to screen for breast cancer, that can easily get slid over as a diagnosis of breast cancer. So this has to do with SNOMED codes or something. So just the point is, the first time you see that patient in front of you, look with your best attention at their problems and their meds, because things, despite people's really best efforts, can come through funny, and you're really the only person who can say, this person does not have breast cancer.
We get into trouble with you have an upcoming visit. Here are your problems.
Right.
Do you have any new ones? And on the problem was, you have big bad colon cancer, tumors.
Yes.
So I get a call it Saturday. So I think we've learned to clean up the problem.
And the other thing is that I've discovered is that if you are doing the clarification of diagnoses, and in some of the translations over, diabetes does not come with all of the subsets. You know, if you have a patient with every one of the complications of diabetes, they may not be, those complication lists are not showing up on the problem list necessarily. Or if they are, they're sometimes showing up as an oddly worded phrase.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that drill down business next month, because
Yes.
I'm not sure it's ready for prime time, first of all, and second of all, I don't understand it. So I'm going to put that on the back burner.
But as part of that, Charles, I discovered that if you go to clean that up and you put in diabetes type 2 with complications within the Cerner list, it won't let you put the new diagnoses in, even if you have either resolved, discontinued.
That's the one I put a ticket in about yesterday.
Yeah. So
Like I say, let's hold that discussion for next month, because that may not be ready for prime time.
Okay.
Here's what your comments look like in the dynamic document. This is my patient who had some, the kidney disease, and you can see I've asterisked her problem, so they float to the top. You can see that, when she started hemodialysis, what's going on with her complicated anemia, that she had mitral regurgitation, and here's her echocardiogram. What I don't know is how this will look on the next DynDoc next month. So tune in. So if she comes back for the next visit, what happens to those comments? Are they going to show up in this list again? Are we going to have a list that, now becomes 5 or 6 pages long as a year from now? We keep adding comments to it. I just don't know for sure how that's going to go. I think the way Dr. Laurie explained to me, I think the comments you put in today show up in today's DynDoc, but I'm not sure about that. So we'll have to see and be careful about that. But this is the recommended way to keep continuity for complicated problems. I want to, before we get done, there's another important thing I want to really talk about here, and that's the subject line. So please, please, please remember, in centricity, we'd always put our initials and what was going on in the subject line. When you sign your note and it says subject or comment up there, when you're signing your note, put a detailed subject line in there, because you're going to be happy 6 months from now, at least for the office visits, and we're trying to get everybody in the system to do this. You'll be able to look at one glance and see what's going on with that patient for the last 6 months. Here's a patient that Dr. Hartley and I did outpatient alcohol detox on, and I was training her how to do this. You can see she gets better as the week goes on, but at least she put in outpatient alcohol detox, and I saw the patient the next day and put down what I did with the drug dose, and then she saw the patient the next day and put down that she was tapering the Librium further. Then I saw the patient the next day and put down, that her Librium was a lower dose, and then she ended the taper. So you can see right there, page by page, step by step what we did. So it's really important to do this. Don't just sign that off. It says office visit note in the signature line. Try to really, when you do your dynamic doc.
Is there any simple way of relabeling where you had ED note and you wanted to, after the fact, know it?
I've not found a way to do that.
So, I mean, put like the diagnoses in there, Bob?
Yeah, right, pancreatitis or.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've not found a way to edit those things, so.
You can't edit somebody else's note, you can only do yours. So
Right.
yes.
If it's your note, if you click down here, it's your note, and you can always edit this, even if you've signed it off, you can go back and edit, but you have to put an addendum in the bottom. I put a period on it, just so I change it enough and lets me sign it. This is where you want to do that editing, so, visit for DM adjustment or whatever, so you can remember what you did the next time. All right. Thanks so much for your hour. It's really helpful, and hang in there. It's going to get better.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you,
That's
Charles.
gonna help with the pre-order.
That's a good question. I assume they have